Alright guys, so here we are for another episode of RC Pit Stop, and today we're going to be working on the Team Magic E63HX. Now I've just had my first run with this truck and I figured I'd take the time to do some repairs in front of the camera, also show you a couple of neat little upgrades that I've got for this truck, and give you some general feedback after my first run. Now this is not going to be a review, it's just some basic feedback. But basically at the end of that first run, I noticed there was a bit of a noise coming from the truck, and I suspected that it was going to be my spur gear. And the reason why I say that is because I got a friend, Corey, over in the States who has the exact same truck, and he managed to run his before I ran mine. And he experienced the same thing. He had a broken spur gear. Now a lot of this is due, I think, to the locked center diff that the truck comes with, which is one of the things I'm going to be changing out today as well. And you know, a locked center diff, it may be good in theory because it allows, you know, really direct power to your wheels, and the truck becomes very responsive. There's a lot of wheelies and all of this sort of thing. You can do backflips on 4S, which is great, but it puts a lot of pressure on your drivetrain, and if those components are not strong enough, you know, you're likely to break them. And even if they appear to be strong enough, I still think that it's really a bad idea, personally. It's only a short-term kind of experience that you're going to have before you realize that you really need a geared center diff to be able to distribute the power and bleed it out a little bit more. I guess, no, I was going to say evenly, but it's not really that the case. It allows for more tuning options, I believe, and it just goes easy on the motor and the gearing and all of these sort of components. So this was my first experience driving an RC with the locked center diff, and although I did have a good time with it, the end result kind of led me to believe that it's really not something that you'd want long term. So what basically happened to the spur gear is this, and I think you can pretty much write this one off. Yeah, it's pretty bad. So here's the thing, there's two problems with this that cause this to happen. Number one, the spur gear itself feels really brittle. It feels like a kind of a cheap metal or aluminium. It doesn't feel like a very strong product at all. And then of course you have the center diff being locked, that, you know, just any power difference that you put on your motor, whether it be forward or reverse, puts a lot of pressure on these teeth. And because there's no slipper clutch or anything like that, you know, if you land with the wheels spinning, you know, automatically it just locks into place, and all of these things become a bit of a problem. The other issue is that perhaps my mesh wasn't 100%, and it may have had a little, you know, the pinion may have had a little bit too much play in the teeth, and then when the truck landed off a jump or what have you, you know, everything kind of banged into place and it just broke the teeth off. Either way, the spur gear is not of the best quality that they've included in the truck. However, Team Magic do have some CNC machined spur gears, and they have a 45 tooth and they have a 47 tooth. Now 47 tooth is what comes standard in the truck. It's the same size as the one that broke. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm actually going to be installing the 47 tooth, because I still need to do some speed runs with this truck to find out just how fast it is in stock form, and then I will be changing it out to the 45 tooth and maybe even putting a bigger pinion in here to really give it some legs, because one of the things I did notice was that the truck was actually, you know, quite short of breath. It didn't really have a lot of top speed. It had a lot of torque. You can feel that there's power there, but it's just been held back by the gearing. At least I believe so anyway. So this is one of the things that we're going to be fixing up today. Another thing, of course, is I'm going to be changing out the locked center diff into a geared center diff, and this will hopefully help distribute the power between the front and rear wheels, and not just have, you know, all this immense power explosion when you punch the throttle and put all this pressure on your gearing. Having a geared center diff, I think, is ideal, and it should save me any more broken spurs or any more issues down the track. So I'm very much looking forward to using that. And now I've got a couple of option parts that well, I'm going to move on to one that I personally want to do, and that's changing out these battery covers. Now these battery covers, they kind of limit what sort of batteries you can use in the truck. So essentially you need batteries that have the cables kind of coming out from the front of the battery, and then you kind of slide them in. There's a little slot in the chassis that allows the cables to sort of slide out, and this guy kind of sits on top and holds the battery in place. But this is a bit fiddly, trying to lock these tabs here into place and then push these down, and then there's some body pins that you gotta slide into place. It's just a bit of mucking around. So it's great to keeping dirt and rocks out of the battery compartment, but really kind of fiddly when you want to change out batteries. So there are a couple of options that you can get. Number one, you can get these battery hold downs. There are some holes underneath the chassis that I originally thought were for ventilation or for any water to kind of escape out from there. But they're actually designed to hold down these posts, which in turn will hold down these battery straps. So you can use the plastic ones if you want, or what I did, I actually got myself the aluminium ones. I wanted to bling the truck out a little bit, so I got these, which look really cool, and I think these actually just screw into place from what I can see. So there's some thread here. I'm very curious to see how all this works and how it fits, but yeah, these look absolutely amazing, and I'm very much going to be installing those as well. The plastic ones, I have to say, Team Magic kind of sent them along with the stuff that I got, so very nice of them to do that, but at least I have some spares. And this is something that these last couple of items is just some things that I wanted to do. This is not really a necessity, but there are some wheelie bar extensions that you can get. These are the wheelie bar. You can also get these, I think, in gold or orange. Can't quite remember. I think it's gold. So you can get these guys, and basically what this does is it will extend the wheelie bar. So as you can see, the wheelie bar is kind of pointing up almost on a 45 at the moment. You can have it coming down all the way so that it almost touches the ground. This allows for really quite precise speed runs. You can just punch the throttle, the truck won't even lift at all, it'll just squat, the wheelie bar is right there next to the ground, and you can have a really nice clean speed run, and that's what I'm going to be using these for when I do the speed tests for this truck. Lastly, these are just a couple of other items that I think are going to look really nice on the truck, and that is the front and rear skid plates, which are these guys here. So this is not something that I think is a necessity, it's just something that I wanted to get personally, and they look absolutely fantastic. They have this brushed look on them, so I don't know how long they're going to stay like that after I run the truck, but very much looking forward to installing a lot of these components on here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the body off. I'll just move this out of the way very quickly, and I'm going to go ahead and just take this guy out of here. So just talk amongst yourselves for a second. And yeah, I'm just going to give you a little bit of feedback on the truck whilst I work on it. So this is how your spur gear is mounted on here. This plate, by the way, is a little bit thin, I think. When you sort of hold it here, it doesn't feel like it flexes or anything moves. But when the motor is mounted onto it, because the motor is quite long, and it doesn't mount directly to the plate, it has this spacer here that you can see, and the pinion kind of sits in there. The stock pinion, by the way, is a 14 tooth, in case you're wondering. So once this mounts onto the plate itself, you can see that it kind of hangs out quite a fair bit, so which is great. I mean, if you want to put huge motors in here, you probably can, but because there's a lot of room. But at the same time, it does put a lot of stress on this motor mount, and I think that they need to improve the thickness or the quality or something on this motor mount to stop it from moving around, which may also be, I'm just speculating here, but it may also be part of the problem as to why the spur gear may have failed, because you kind of land a jump, this flexes a little bit, and the teeth, if the mesh isn't 100%, the teeth can probably just flex out a little bit, and then they hit, and then things break. So that may have been part of the issue. I didn't check my mesh prior to running the truck, so I don't know if that was actually the case. I'm just speculating, just thinking out loud, but yeah, this is one thing that I think Team Magic also need to address, and I'm hoping they do. So let's move on to reassembling this truck. I've got a few bits and pieces here that I need to put together. So on the actual spur gear, there is this little aluminium piece that you got to mount on. So I'll quickly take this guy out of here. Do I have some scissors or something to cut this with? Yes, I do. So we'll take this guy out of here. And I'm going, as I said, I'm going to stick with the 47 tooth. So here, I'm just going to mount this guy over the top. Might actually mount it, doesn't really matter which side it goes on. I might mount it on this side. And I'll put my little screws on here, and then I'll just mount it on there just quickly. Okay, so I got my spur gear all mounted up. It was very easy to do. There's really not much to it. You have 3 screws. Those 3 little screws kind of going from the front. They lock onto that little aluminium plate that I showed you, and there's a bolt that basically just goes over the top here. Because there's no slipper clutch or anything, it's a very simple way that it mounts on. There's really not much to it. Now I'm about to mount my motor, and this isn't tightened into place yet. I thought I would take this opportunity to show you how I do my gear mesh, because for young players out there, there are a couple of different methods in which you can actually use to set your gear mesh and to make sure that it's not too tight and it's not too loose. One of the ways that some people use is that they'll stick a bit of paper in there and kind of push the motor up against the spur gear, tighten it into place, and then pull the paper out. I don't have an issue with that method. I just don't prefer it. I prefer my method purely because I'm more in control of how it's set up, and I'm going to show you how I do it. You may choose to do something completely different. You may choose to go with the paper method. Neither of these are wrong, really. So basically, now that I've got my motor sort of mounted up, and the way that this mounts on here, it's very simple. There is a screw down the bottom, which is a fixed point. So that one there is actually fixed. And then this one here is on a slot. So this one here will actually allow you to move the motor forwards and backwards to set your gear mesh. The bottom one doesn't move, obviously. So what I do is, you can see now it's, the pin's not even touching the spur. So I'll push it in up against the spur, and I'll push it hard up against the spur. I'll give the bottom screw a bit of a slight tight, a couple of turns, and just make it so that I can still move it, but it kind of does stay in place to where I can move it. Tighten it a little bit more. There we go. All right, so I can still move it a little bit. All right, there we go. Okay, so now I've pushed it hard up against the spur gear, and it's very tight. You can even feel it. It's actually quite tight. So what I do from here is I knock it back ever so slightly. I just move it back a little bit, and without moving the truck, I just wiggle my spur gear just a little bit. So I tend to move a little bit. What I want to hear is, I want to hear these very slight clicks. By hearing that and by feel, I know that I've set my gear mesh correctly. If I've pulled it back too far, and you guys can hear that? So that's probably set too far apart. It's not quite right. If I have it too close, there's no clicking, right? It's too tight. So I'll move it back just a little bit. And those are the clicks that I want to hear. So now I'll tighten this guy up just a little bit, because what happens here is sometimes when you tighten this positioning screw, the motor mount will move. So you just have to keep checking. There it is there. Beautiful. All right, so I have just a tiny little bit of play, and that is exactly what I want. Move it around, and I still have that tiny little bit of clicking sound. So I know that there's a gap there, and that to me, that's my gear mesh set. Very simple, no need for any pieces of paper. I'll tighten this up again, holding the motor in place. Now, in a lot of cases, I tend to use, just a driver like this to tighten up my screws. But for the motor mount, if I can use an Allen key, I will, because I have that little bit more leverage, and I can torque it a little bit better than with a screwdriver. So that is fine. Now I'm going to tighten up the top screw. All right, my gear mesh is now set to my liking. So you can see, like, there's very little movement there, but it still has that clicking sound, which is what I want. All right, so gear mesh is set. Now I can put the little gear cover back on, which is this guy, and this one's a little bit of a pain to take on and off, I will say. So I'll quickly do that. And before I forget, a couple of things regarding the ESC. Number one, there is a scoop here that I've removed, which makes life a little bit easier. There's 4 screws. You remove this guy and you have better access to everything here, because there are a couple of screws that hold this gear cover into place, and they're kind of going from this side, and with that scoop on there, it does make it very, very tricky for you to actually get access to those screws. There we go. That's on, nice and easy. So here's one of the screws here, and if I'm not wrong, I should be able. Actually, it wasn't this one that I was using. It was this one. This is a very cheap wrench, but it really comes in handy because look, I can bend it. Another thing regarding the ESC, before I forget, it is in fact 100 amps, not 80 amps, as I had stated in my unboxing. I do want to clarify that because I did make a mistake there. It seems like Hobbywing have actually updated their ESCs recently, and I don't even know if they still make the 80 amp ones, to be honest. I think a lot of these newer ones are now 100 amp. Which is great. Not complaining. That's actually a very good thing. I will tighten up that screw a little bit more once I've sort of put these into place. But these ESCs, you know, they seem to be pretty solid. Hobbywing has built up a really nice reputation over the last couple of years, maybe even a bit more than that, on having some really decent ESCs. Hoping you guys can see that. I know my arms are always in the way. So I'm pretty confident that this ESC will actually hold up. Now, the interesting thing that I found after talking to a few people on Facebook as well as in the comments is that there is in fact, or there used to be, a 6S version of this truck, and they even had a brushed version of this truck, which is very interesting back in the day. So now they've got this one. I think someone actually told me, don't quote me on this, but I think someone said that the very first releases had a castle system in it that was actually 6S. Not sure if it was a Mamba Monster or anything like that, but yeah, it was interesting. I've been finding out a lot about this truck, which is nice. So now these guys can clip on here like so. There we are, and that is my spur gear problem solved. I'm going to put the ESC cover back on, which is kind of boring, and I'm going to come back, I'm going to put the center diff together, and then I'll show you the assembly of that. Alright guys, so I got my diff all assembled and ready to go, and as you can see, I've also taken the time to put in my skid plates while they had the truck upside down. I figured, hey, why not whack them in there. Now the diff itself is actually relatively easy to put together. There's really no tricks here. They do supply you with some washers that you will need to put on your spider gears. Instructions for the diff can be found in the original manual, so there is a page here that actually shows you how to assemble this. Follow the instructions, which is just a blown up picture, and it's pretty easy. Just make sure you don't forget to put in that little grub screw just there, because if you don't put that in there, obviously oil will spill out. The reason that's in there is to just put a little cross pin for your outdrive cup to hold it into place. And that's it, pretty straightforward. Nothing really fancy about putting this guy together. If you put one diff together, you probably know how this all goes. They supply everything in the packet, so you get all your screws, you get all your washers. They even give you a little shim here to be able to mount it back onto the truck. And I'm going to do that right now. Just going to line up my dog bones here and put on the other one, and hopefully I can do this in one go without too much hassle. There we go, done. Pretty easy. Put my diff cover back on, and I can screw that on, and we're ready to go. And I'll come back and I'll show you the battery trays, or the battery hold downs that I got. Alright, got my battery hold downs all mounted up and ready to go. However, I will admit that I did make a little bit of a silly mistake. When I ordered these, I must have only ordered one pair of these body posts in aluminium, when I should have ordered 2 pairs. So I guess it's a bit of a brain fart, because these hold downs actually come in pairs and I only needed 2. And for some reason I figured, hey, I only need 2 of these as well, I don't know. So I've only got 2 of these, But having said that, I'm actually glad that I didn't get all 4 of them because, to be quite honest, I'm not a huge fan of these. I don't like the thread lock on the body, on the battery hold down. Although they do have, I'll show you on the other one, they do have holes there for your body posts, but the problem is that even on the lowest point, which is not the one on the bottom here, it's actually the next one up, the lowest point won't allow me to have the hold down flat on the battery pack. So you end up with a bit of a gap, and it's the same problem with the plastic ones. You can probably see it on camera already. So you'll see here that there is actually quite a huge gap between the hold down and the battery. So what tends to happen is you're going to end up having the battery sort of dancing around inside your battery tray. Now, I've come up with a little bit of a remedy to fix this. It's quite an easy thing to do, and that is just to cut up a little bit of foam, such as I have done here, and you can either mount it underneath the battery and have the battery sit on top, or you can actually have it wedged in between the actual hold down and the battery pack, and that stops the battery from dancing around. So here you can see the problem, and on this side you can see the solution. So I've actually put on this one, I've actually mounted it straight onto the bed of the battery tray, and then just put the hold down straight on top of that, and that's it. My battery's not going to go anywhere, it's not going to move around. Of course, if you haven't caught on by now, the main reason for me getting these battery hold downs is so that I can use these types of batteries which have the bullets style of connectors here that you can see. Otherwise I'd be limited to this type of battery. Actually, I'll grab the other one. I'll be limited to this type of battery where the cables sort of come out from the front, because then they feed through the little grooves, the little slots for the battery covers that they had. So this would have sat in there like that, and there's a little slot that sort of comes out the back here for your cable to come out of. And as I said, you know, some people have been modifying these lids. I've decided to do it this way. You know, each to their own, I guess. So that is pretty much everything that I need to change on the truck. I'm very happy with it, and very happy with the mods and everything else. Very much looking forward to running it now with the geared center diff. I did use 500 weight diff oil for those of you who are curious. It just seems to be my go-to diff oil for center diffs on monster trucks. I like that setup, and I think I'm going to enjoy it on this one as well. And yeah, this guy's ready for another burn, so stay tuned. I'll have another running video very soon, and I'll also have some speed runs coming up on this guy to find out just how fast it is. So yeah, that is pretty much it. I'm going to leave it here. Don't forget to check out the video description, guys, for more information on the truck, as well as a link to my Facebook page. And that's it. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll speak to you guys next time.